I'm here from AMX 3D to show you how to use their different LEDs and electronic components and some of the different LED kits that they've provided to build a light up hat like the one I'm wearing. I'm going to walk you through some of the ways the LEDs work, what the differences are between some of AMX 3D's products, and what they are used for. But first, I want to start at the basics on how you connect an LED to a power supply so that it works and it's an effective connection and you don't short your circuit. You want to be sure at any given point that you are always connecting, whether it is conductive thread or conductive tape, that you're conducting the negatives to the negatives, and again, to the negative end of the power supply or the power source. And then the same is true with the positives. Only connect the positive ends of the LEDs to the positive output of your power source. Also important, when you have any exposed wires and your power is supplied on, or really any exposed wires at any time, be sure that the positive and the negatives do not cross and do not overlap, as when there is current going through those, it is going to short the circuit if the positive touches the negative. So again, just something to keep in mind when working with LEDs and working with power sources. Now, I want to walk you through some of the components that are used to make the product, like the hat that I'm wearing. The components that you'll need are conductive thread, a power supply, and LEDs. There is also an optional processor that you can use that adds different effects to your lights. I did not use one for the purpose of this project, as I wanted the lights on the hat to stay on constantly. I didn't want them blinking, I didn't want them flashing, but you can program some really neat things using different AMX 3D components. Now, originally, the purpose of LEDs and the different components were used for wearables. LEDs, conductive thread, they're really great for wearable projects because they are washable. All you have to do is remove your batteries, remove your power supply, and then you can wash the LEDs and you can wash the conductive thread. Hand wash, but still, you can clean them if they're on fabric, which is great. Now, when you're conducting conductive thread to an LED, you need to have a resistor involved when doing that. One thing that AMX 3D has done has included the resistor in the LEDs themselves. This is one of the main reasons I highly recommend using AMX 3D LEDs. LEDs are particular about the amount of current that they receive. If you try to use any old LED, you're going to have to put a resistor in the circuit before the LED. It's not something that's hard to do, but it takes time, it's extra sewing, and you have to do the math to figure out how many resistors or what size resistor to use for the LED. AMX 3D has taken the math, the extra sewing out of the project altogether by including the resistor within the LEDs themselves. Now, you may have noticed that AMX 3D has two different kinds of LEDs available for purchase. They are dual LEDs and classic LEDs. There's unique differences between these two different types of LEDs, but there's also some similarities. The classic LEDs are white in color, and they're a little bit thicker, or a lot thicker than the dual LEDs. The dual LEDs are black in color. Both work for all different applications and really any applications. Although I do find with the dual LEDs being a little bit thinner that it's easier if I'm doing a project that involves soldering because it's closer to connect that solder or that current to the LED itself. Also, the one is white, the other is black. You can select them based on, for the purpose of the hat, the dual LEDs were black, so they blended in very well within the project. With dual versus classic LEDs, the output or the input of the current and the output of the light, the brightness, are the same across the two. But again, that thickness does make a difference for the type of projects that you're working on. Now, back to the specific project, the light up hat that I am wearing currently. What's needed for this project specifically? First, you're going to need any old product that you want to decorate. Again, for the purposes of this project, we use this top hat. You can also maybe use a train, maybe put a light in a dollhouse. You may want to make a cosplay outfit or light up a mask. You might want to have light up power gloves or, again, a light up hat. Maybe something that lights up when you're out walking your dog. It's up to you. Again, for the purpose of this, we're using the hat. Other items that you're going to need for this project include a needle, glue, either hot glue gun or a glue stick will work, some tape. I used electrical tape because it's flexible. You can use almost any tape for the purposes of this project. You also need scissors, a ruler, again, glue, and one of AMX 3D's LED assortments. Now, the LED assortments include LEDs, and they also include the power supply. One last thing that is super important for this project is conductive thread. You can also use conductive tape depending on what you're doing and what works best for your needs. For the purpose of this one, use conductive thread. Now, back to the different assortments that AMX 3D offers and how they may assist with the different projects. AMX 3D offers LEDs in 7 different colors. They offer various power supplies, different processors, different sensors. You can do a lot with the different electronics. Now, using their sets, they've made it a little bit easier. And I selected the AMX 3D Classic Pack with the battery pack. I did this because I planned on putting a lot of LEDs on my hat, as you can see. I spaced them 1 inch apart, so there were 24 LEDs total used to make this hat. The coin cell battery holder works. It has the extra capacity of 3 AAA batteries to keep all the LEDs burning a lot longer. Now, some people might be intimidated by the fact that you have to connect wires and conductive thread or conductive thread to the different LEDs. It's actually super easy to do, and I'm going to walk you through how you take care of that. Now, let's get on with building the hat. First, what you want is you want to have ribbon that you can use to attach the LEDs to the hat itself. You want to take black ribbon, or whatever color you really want for the purposes of your project, and measure it to be the length of the hat itself. Once it's measured, cut the ribbon so that it's the right length. Now, once you have your plain black ribbon, this is where you want to get your ruler and something to mark the ribbon. Now, for the purposes of my project, I marked the ribbon at every inch so that the LEDs are consistently spaced. It also helps when I'm adding the cover to the LEDs later on in the project, which I'll walk you through. I do want to mention, though, that you don't have to be as concerned about the messiness as you are attaching LEDs and you're threading it with the conductive thread. If you plan to do what I will show you, which is putting a cover on top of kind of your workspace. But again, I'll walk you through that a little bit later. So, 1 inch apart, you want to measure using your ruler and mark different spots where you are then going to glue your LEDs. Then, using the hot glue gun, I attached my LEDs to my ribbon. I was very careful when I did this to make sure that all of the positives ran the same way and all of the negatives ran the same way as well. You don't want to mismatch any of the LEDs. Again, that can short your circuit, or it won't work if they're not all positive to positive, negative to negative. One thing that I found really easy when I was attaching the LEDs is looking at where the resistor on AMX 3D's LEDs is located, and it helps make it really easy to see that all of the resistors are facing the same direction, so you know that all of your positive charges are facing the opposite direction. Now, once you have your LEDs glued the length of your ribbon, that's when you want to start sewing with your conductive thread. You attach your conductive thread to your needle, tuck it through the first positive or negative side, whichever you prefer to start with, on your ribbon or your LED, and you want to secure the first end of that conductive thread. Then simply loop the conductive thread through each of the positive or negative sides, or all of the positive or negative sides of the LEDs throughout the length of the ribbon. Once you finish that, at the end of your ribbon, leave a little bit of slack. This slack is going to be used eventually to poke through the hat and then to connect to your power supply. So you want to make sure that you have enough to poke through and then to tie a knot around the appropriate power supply. When you've done it with one side, you then want to do the same with the other side. Attach the conductive thread to the first end, sew it all the way through. Make sure it's taut all the way through and it's a tight connection so that the current is consistent all the way across. And at the end, leave a little bit extra slack, and you are done with your sewing piece, at least the first part of that. Now, once you finish connecting all of those LEDs, it's time to connect the ribbon to your hat. You want to place it around the length of the hat. And again, poke a hole through the hat so you can tuck the wires through. After you tuck the wires through, you then are going to attach them to the power supply. Attach the positive side to the positive end of the power supply, usually the red wire. I tied a knot of the conductive thread around the power supply and then used a dab of hot glue to hold it in place. Then I did the same thing with the negative side. It's also important to note, once I added these in, I definitely made sure that the LEDs were working before I attached the power source within the hat. Once I confirm that the LEDs are working, you can attach the power source within the hat. Again, throughout this whole process, being very careful to make sure the positive and the negative wires do not cross and do not touch one another. That will short your circuit. One way to be sure that that does not happen is to add electrical tape within the hat itself to tape the wire to, keeping them separate throughout. Then, once you make sure it's working and it's all in place, tape the power supply up within your hat, turn it on, and your light up hat is ready and lit up. Now, at this point, you'll have all of the work exposed. So there is one more step involved in finishing it up and really making it look cleaner. To do this, you want to cut another ribbon the length of the hat to cover it up. You want to mark again 1-inch increments. If you're not sure what you spaced your LEDs at, or some may be closer than others together, you can use your marker along the hat itself to mark where the LEDs are. Then, using a simple hole puncher, and there's different sizes of hole punchers. I used one of the smaller sizes, but you can use a hole puncher, nice and easy to punch holes throughout the fabric itself. Once you've punched the holes throughout the fabric, you want to attach that ribbon to the other ribbon on the hat, making sure the LEDs align throughout. Secure it in place, making sure you don't break any of the conductive thread, as you do need that complete circuit all the way throughout. So lastly, in conclusion, just to wrap up, what's required to make this project work? You need conductive thread or conductive tape, LEDs, or one of AMX 3D's electronics kits that includes LEDs and the power supply. And there's also the option to have a processor to add special effects to the lights if you want them to flicker, to blink, or to program them to do special effects. Happy crafting from AMX 3D!